Guys, a new discovery has been made in the world of archaeology that proves the real location of the Temple Mount. What is this discovery and where does it prove the Temple Mount to be? We're going to get into all of that here on the show today. I'm Ben, and this is the Israel Guys. Welcome back to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of Jew hatred and anti-Israel propaganda, you should have a direct connection to the land and people of Israel. Thank you so much for joining us again here today. Guys, if you find yourself keep coming back to this channel over and over again, don't hesitate to hit the subscribe button. Helps you find these videos every week more easily. Hit the little bell next to it so you get notified whenever we drop new content 5 times a week. Most weeks here at the Israel Guys. Also follow us on all the other social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We love to connect with you on all those different platforms. Recently, there was a new discovery made in the world of archaeology. And this discovery had to do with water and the Temple Mount. And why are these two things important? What does water have to do with the Temple Mount? There's a new pop theory gaining prominence, or gaining popularity, more like I should say, in the Christian community largely, in the States and also abroad, that tries to change the site of the Temple Mount. Traditional archaeologists for a very long time have said that the temple was up on Mount Moriah, above in the upper part of Jerusalem, and that the city of David sloped down below. And this new pop theory, so to speak, is claiming that the temple was not actually up on Mount Moriah, that it's down below in the city of David. As far as I'm aware, the first person to put out to make this claim was Ernest Martin, a quote-unquote scholar, who wrote a book in the early 2000s, the year 2000, called The Temples That Jerusalem Forgot. And I've read parts of the book. I actually haven't read his entire book because it's a very difficult read, and it's filled with all kinds of sloppy scholarship, typos, all kinds of stuff, poorly researched ideas, where he claims that the Temple Mount was not on the traditional site, on Mount Moriah, but in fact down in the city of David. And no one really paid attention to the book. It wasn't very well written at all. It wasn't very well researched at all until, in more recent times, a guy by the name of Robert Cornuke, a self-described adventurer, I think, who's made a number of viral claims concerning different biblical sites and different archaeological sites, with Mount Sinai and a whole host of Malta and a whole host of other things. He took the Ernest Martin's book and basically repackaged it. He's a fantastic storyteller. And repackaged it into something a little bit more palatable, easier read. He made like a documentary, and there's been a host of different short films and that kind of thing. So he took Ernest Martin's idea and popularized it. And a lot of people these days kind of buy into it, hook, line, and sinker, because they see the presentation, and the presentation that he makes is really good. It's really good on its face if you don't know anything about archaeology in Jerusalem or the Temple Mount. There are a number of basic tenets that he proposes as to why the temple cannot be on the traditional Temple Mount up on Mount Moriah. One of the biggest tenets that he raises is the idea that there was not water up on the Temple Mount. Like he specifically says, there is not a drop of water on the Temple Mount. And as you know, to do the temple services, first and second temple, required a lot of water. He had to fill the laver, the bronze laver, for the priests to wash their hands and feet in, as they went into the temple, and for a whole host of different rituals, which required a lot of water. You also had to be able to, wash the blood off the floor of the temple to cleanse the sacrifices. All kinds of different things required a lot of water. And so if Cornuke is correct and there wasn't a drop of water on the Temple Mount, he claims that since there's no water on the traditional Temple Mount, the only fresh water source in Jerusalem was the Gihon Spring. And that spring is down in the city of David. And so he's like, there's no way they pumped the water up to the Temple Mount. There's no evidence of that. And so the temple must be down on top of the Gihon Spring, or very close to it down in the city of David. And if this was true, if there was not a single drop of water on the Temple Mount like Cornuke claims, this could be a valid probability. Except Cornuke is absolutely wrong. I have no idea how he makes this claim. I don't know if this is ignorance or outright deception or where on earth he thinks it's valid to pull a claim like this from, because to claim that there was not a single drop of water on the Temple Mount, on its face, if you know anything about Jerusalem archaeology, is patently insane. It really is. It's absolutely patently insane. The Palestine Exploration Fund, led by Sir Charles Warren in the late 1860s, surveyed and mapped the water cisterns under the Temple Mount. When they came to the Ottoman Empire, they actually got permission to work on the Temple Mount, doing archaeological stuff, and Charles Warren really knew his stuff. And they started working. These were solid engineers, and they started working on top of the Temple Mount and underneath it, and they mapped cisterns, freshwater cisterns under the Temple Mount that could hold 200 million plus gallons of water, and they only mapped a portion before they were stopped by the Ottomans, who kind of realized, like, hey, we actually don't want them working on the Temple Mount. And when they were stopped by the Ottomans, they were forced to go down and work more down in the city of David, ended up making a tremendous amount of discoveries down in the city of David. So, but before they did, they discovered 200 million gallons worth of freshwater cisterns on the Temple Mount, because the Temple Mount is a platform, 35-acre stone platform for the most part, and it was built in such a way that rainwater in the winter would collect on the platform and drain down into these cisterns underneath the Temple Mount. And we actually have historical records that they pulled in First Temple era period. They pulled water from these cisterns into the Temple Mount for the temple service, and they actually had machines that they would lower the laver down underneath the Temple Mount, fill it with water every single morning, bring it up for the temple service. And so that on its face, to say that, I mean, these are easily available, highly known about things here with Charles Warren, highly known about discoveries of Charles Warren as to the water on the Temple Mount, and then also the historical records of how they got the water out to use for the temple service. So that in and of itself, to claim that there's not a drop of water on the Temple Mount, is patently insane. I have no idea the motivation here for Cornuke to claim otherwise. Even if that was the only source of water on the Temple Mount, but there's not. There's actually a second one. In the Second Temple period, the Hasmoneans built the Maccabees the Maccabean dynasty built a water aqueduct system from Bethlehem that would bring fresh water from Bethlehem into Jerusalem and dumped it into massive holding pools outside of Jerusalem. And then it was piped up into Jerusalem and then also to the Temple Mount in and of itself. And a lot of this aqueduct is actually still intact. You can see it. You can see the holding pools, what they call like Solomon's pools. And this is a massive, crazy system. We're going to get into that and the discovery here in just a second. That's really cool. But first, we need you to come to the land of Israel to play your part in bringing Israel's forests back to life. October 17th through November 6th, we have a team of volunteers joining us in Israel for one mission, and that is to plant trees in Judea and Samaria, Israel's biblical heartland. For 2,000 years, this area of Israel has lain desolate and barren, even though groups have planted trees in the rest of Israel over the last 100 years. Judea and Samaria has been neglected due to political sensitivities. No more. Our mission is to plant 20,000 trees in the biblical heartland just this year, 20,000 trees just this year. And this 2-week volunteer trip will play a huge role in that. Join us for a hardworking, unforgettable volunteer experience in Israel's heartland. This year, you may be surprised at how much a trip like this can change your life. To find out more, go to serveisrael.com/volunteer or click the link in the description below. Don't wait though, because time is running out to sign up. The deadline to register is September 26th. If you love God, Israel, and are ready for a hardworking adventure in the land of Israel, sign up for our tree planting volunteer program at serveisrael.com/volunteer or click the link in the description below. So, first water source, was cisterns underneath the Temple Mount. Second water source in the Second Temple period was this aqueduct that went from Jerusalem, aqueduct's piping system from Bethlehem to Jerusalem. That was 21 kilometers long. And just recently, there's this article dropped from the Jerusalem Post. Quote, the longest continuous section of Jerusalem's ancient aqueduct has been uncovered in Givat Hamatos, the Israel Antiquities Authority announced on Monday. The stretch of the ancient aqueduct, which measures some 300 meters in length, was discovered during archaeological excavations of the area prior to the planned development of the settlement of the municipality of Jerusalem. The municipality plans on building schools. In the late days of the Second Temple, the city of Jerusalem grew significantly. The temple had been rebuilt, and the water that flowed in conduits and cisterns was no longer sufficient for the thousands of pilgrims and residents. They explained water needed to be brought to the city from a distance. So in order to meet Jerusalem's growing need for water, the Hasmoneans and then King Herod built two aqueducts to Jerusalem. One of the aqueducts, the upper one, aqueduct, channeled water to the upper city that is presently the Jewish and Armenian quarter of the old city. The lower aqueduct brought water to the temple. Shayam and Cohen describe these aqueducts as being among the largest and most complex water systems in the land of Israel, and indeed the ancient world. The aqueducts were remarkable feats of engineering, each traversing the roughly 10 kilometers from the Bethlehem Springs, where the water originated, to Jerusalem. Additionally, in the foundations of the aqueduct from the days of the 10th Legion, we found about 25 coins scattered at relatively equal distance. Shayam and Cohen said, in our opinion, this was not accidental. It is quite similar to the custom today where coins are placed there for good luck. Also found in the aqueduct's infrastructure was a coin from the Second Temple era that was minted around 67 to 68 CE during the Great Jewish Revolt, otherwise known as the First Three Jewish-Roman Wars. The press release noted that the researchers theorized the builders of the ancient Jerusalem aqueduct incorporated it into the structure's foundation that when laying the conduit. So they were doing work to build new schools in Jerusalem, and as part of that stumbled across more of this aqueduct system, the longest stretch that they've ever found in one piece together. This happens all the time in Jerusalem because you're combining a new infrastructure with tons of archaeology, and so when you go to dig for this new infrastructure, stuff just takes forever in Jerusalem, all over Israel as well, because you just stumble across stuff all the time. This has happened so many times. So this further proves this. I mean, we already knew this aqueduct system was here that leads from Bethlehem up to the Temple Mount, up to the upper city of Jerusalem. But this is one of the longest pieces of it altogether that they found. Absolutely incredible stuff. I don't know how you can claim that again, that there was not a drop of water on the Temple Mount when stuff like this is out there and not really, not even contested. Like, no, I don't think there's anyone that says that this wasn't there, or wasn't the intended purpose of it. I really don't understand how conclusions like this get drawn. This is just one tenet that Kornuk and Ernest Martin before him made as to why the Temple Mount is down in the city of David. And it kind of goes to prove that a lot of these tenets, when made on their face, if you don't know anything about Jerusalem archaeology, obviously if you're not in that world and you don't know a lot about it, it sounds good. You know, somebody comes along, they sound like they know what they're talking about, and they say, there was not a drop of water on the Temple Mount, therefore it must be down in the city of David because, hey, there's this beautiful spring, so the spring supplied water to the Temple Mount. Until you hear that there's 200 million gallon cisterns under the Temple Mount, that there's historical records of how those cisterns were used, and that there's actually a piping system that piped fresh water from Bethlehem in massive quantities up to Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. Until those little details. And this is not isolated. The other tenets that they put forth about the Antonia Fortress, about the size of the Temple Mount, are also patently insane on their face. And if you want to know more about it, we're not going to get into it today, but if you want me to do more shows like this where I address these other issues in regards to the location of the Temple Mount, let me know down in the comments below, because we can for sure get into it. The Temple Mount is the place of God's throne. It's the place where God says his footstool is, the place where his glory resides. And to lightheartedly say, oh no, this place, it's not the real place. We're going to move it somewhere else, especially if it includes admitting readily available facts, twisting facts, lying about facts. I don't know. I mean, how do you want to frame this with Cornuke and Martin and other people like this? I hate to accuse people of things, but it really is crazy to think that they don't know this stuff, or they're not willing to learn, or they're not willing to research enough and just throw content out. That's patently insane. So if you want to know more about this kind of thing, if you want to dive into the other points on this list, we have tons more we can get into. Let me know down in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And tune out the fake news. Tune into what is actually happening here in the land of Israel. We'll be back every day, Monday through Friday, with your direct connection to the land and people of Israel.